All right. Well, thank you, Pauline, for saying that you're going to talk to us about living in Stogursey, because you were born in a village, yes?
Yes, in 1944, Castle House. My parents were coming down to live in Somerset in the early 40s. The house that they were supposed to have with the job my father came for in the bakery wasn't ready for some reason. So they were booked into the pub in Lime Street, the Greyhound.
Right.
And then Mrs. Bishop owned it then, apparently. There was no electricity then, just oil lamps.
Was that in every property in Stogursey?
Yes. I can't remember exactly when we had electric, but it was a little while, I think. So everything was dark, no street lights or anything.
Right.
And I don't know, they must have arrived late one night, because my mother, I remember saying that Mrs. Bishop came to the door with this oil lamp in her hand and her hair all awry, almost looking like a witch. And she wondered what she'd come to, the end of the earth, I think. And all these men with their hats on, talking in a foreign language, which it seemed to them, because they came from Yorkshire. And they were shown to their room, and apparently overnight they had bed bugs or something. So the bed had to be stripped down the next day and washed with carbolic soap, etc. And the actual bed was nailed to the floor, so it was a fixture, a wooden frame, I think. I never saw it, but it was just a story I was told. I don't know how long they had to stay there, but the cottage obviously still wasn't ready, so they were put into the house at Castle Street. And Miss Harris lived there.
Is that now what's Castle House?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, and it's called Castle Street. It was Mill Street then. And of course, with it being a large place, the lady lived in the back of the house. My parents had the front part, and that's where I was born, in one of the bedrooms at the front. I don't remember any.
You don't remember it? No, that's not surprising.
I'm not quite sure how old I was when we left, but I must have been about 3, I think, 4. And then we moved to the cottage in Back Street, which was called Pear Tree Cottage then. Okay. And it had 2 bedrooms and 2 rooms downstairs, kitchen and living room, and an old stone sink. No hot or cold water, there was just cold water coming in. An outside toilet, which was next to a pigsty.
And the outside toilet, that had no water?
Yes, it was a flush. We had a flush toilet, which next door to us, and Mrs. Squires lived there, and they had the old wooden 2-seater one, which had straw underneath it, and then they had to empty it, I don't know how many times a year, put it on the gardens, But ours was actually flush, so we were quite modern. And the bath was just a tin bath in the kitchen when you had to have a bath.
Did you have to heat up the water?
Yes, in a boiler. I don't know what it was, like a big, large dish type thing with a lid on, and on top of the fire, really.
So what did you cook on, or what did your mother cook on?
Well, we did have one of the old-fashioned black Rangers, which never seemed to get hot enough for cooking things properly. And my mother had like an oil cooker with 2 rings on the top, which she used for many years till we had the electric put in.
Wow.
So,
and when was electric put in?
Well, I think it must have been in the 50s, I'm not sure. I can't remember. But I can remember as a child having tilly lamps and oil lamps, for lighting, and the hissing noise it made, when you had to prime it up.
Yes.
But obviously the electric must have come in at some stage. But of course with no televisions or anything then, it was just radio. And I can remember my father going over to the garage to get the accumulator for the radio. The huge, great vase things filled with this acid. And I don't really understand it, but they had to be changed every so often. They had like terminals on the top where you fitted your radio wires, you know, to get it to work.
Gosh.
And the actual huge vessel it was in was made of very thick glass. And if you could get an empty one and, you know, washed out really well, it made a very good vase. Big and ugly things they were, really, and heavy. But, and our kitchen had a hook in it, because we kept a pig at one stage, during the wartime, I suppose, and the pigsty was next to the toilet.
So your family actually kept a pig?
Yes,
Oh, right.
yes. I think it was encouraged at that time to have one, you know, and chicken and things like that. Yes, I can remember the pig. My father used to let it out when he was cleaning it out and talk to it like a friend. How he could have killed it in the end, I don't know, but it used to come grunting up to the back door. I think it would have come in if we hadn't bolted it. And we used to be really scared of it as children, because it seemed so huge, you know. And especially if you went to the toilet down there, and it used to get up onto the wall and you know, wait for somebody to come out, and it seemed so close. I used to stand on the toilet and shout over the little gap at the top of the door, "Mum, come and fetch me, the pig's up on the wall." We had quite a long garden then, long and narrow, and it was all vegetables really grown there. And then a little bit of back garden by the window, which was for flowers and things. And an old shed where I can remember as a child sitting in there, plucking chickens, you know, for Christmas. Where they came from I can't remember, but I remember white feathers everywhere, and I was helping. And then the smell of burning the stubble off with a taper.
Yes.
It still sort of sticks in your mind. It's quite a strong smell. And I can remember my father made us a little swing in the back doorway, so that when the door's open we could swing in and out. It was the only sort of large space you had. And I can remember using all his nails up and hammering nails into the shed, you know.
For a reason?
No, I thought I just like knocking nails into things, I think. I got into trouble for it afterwards, because they were all over the shed, you know, where I could reach, sort of thing. No, it was, but we used to have lots of fun there, and I can remember my sister being born in that cottage. I had to sleep in the bedroom with my father in the front bedroom, and I can remember being told, you know, to stay there and not to go anywhere else. And of course he was working at the bakery then, and they promised me the next day I could see the baby, and then they forgot me. I was sat on the stairs in the dark for ages and ages, wanting to know what this thing was that was making all this noise. And the nurse came out and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear, we forgot you, you know." So I was very disappointed.
How old were you then?
I was 4 going on 5.
Right.
I would have been 5 in the January. My sister was born in the December. And I can just remember going in to see her, and her face was really quite red. My father said she was a little red Indian, and very, very dark hair, you know. And now she's blonde and I'm the darker one. But that was in 1948 she was born.
Right.
We used to know a girl next door to us called Valerie, but she died at an early age from meningitis.
Really?
Valerie Squires, yes. We used to play ball together. We used to have 2 pieces of wall at the front in Back Street, and we used to pretend to fall out, sort of thing. No, this is my piece. No, this is your piece. No, this is my piece, you know. Because they were different. It's still there, actually, the brickwork.
Yes.
One side was a bit smoother than the other. So your ball, how it landed on the wall,
It was
you know.
easier.
Yes,
If
yes,
it
it bounced back
one.
like, yes. And we used to play 2-ball and 3-ball and skipping outside.
2-ball and 3-ball?
Yes, I couldn't do it now, I don't think, but you used to play against the wall. You used to do about 10 to begin with, then so many over like that, then so many under your leg, and then so many up in the air like that, and then one round your back, and then you'd start again, you know, adding an extra bit to it. And skipping, we used to do lots of skipping, which you don't see now really.
No, you don't, not so much at all.
No. Yes, we used to do the bumps, as they used to call it, but you had to have, if you did it with more than 2 playing, you had to have 2 holding the rope either end, and they had to know how to do it, you know, for the bumps, because it was a different turn like that. And not everybody could had the knack of doing it, you see. And then you used to go in and do your rhyme thing, and then come out and then run in again and do that. We had several different rhymes, I think, but don't hear them.
No, I haven't heard them for a long time.
No.
What about, you obviously played, you said, with the girl next door. Other friends from school or the village? Yes,
some lived, you know, further down the village, in Lime Street, the end of Lime Street, which was Northfields. They've since moved away and they live in Bruton now, but we were very friendly with that family. They were called Cross, and there was 3 girls and a boy, and just recently one of the girls died, you know, at 58. That's all she was. She had an aneurysm and just suddenly went. But and we still keep in touch, the other sisters and I, you know, and we go and see them occasionally and have a meal together. So we still have a contact. But there's lots of people have gone, if you know what I mean. They've either moved away from the village, and I can remember the Ackland, there was people called Belcher there. And they had 2 daughters. One of them was called Jennifer. Can't remember what the other one was called. Penny, I think, Penny Belcher. And we used to play together. And they used to have a little monkey.
Really?
Yes, Jacko, I think it was called. Yes. And they used to dress it up. It had a little hat as well. And it used to go anywhere it wanted. It used to go right up the top of the curtains. You know, it was quite destructive, really. And they could never catch it once it was out. It was quite a menace, really. I just remember it. They moved away eventually. I don't know where. And I can remember having the pictures at the films shows at the Ackland many years ago.
Was that sort of on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think they had it once a week.
Yes.
And there were black and white films, you know. I remember one was called Champagne Charlie. And there was, like...
Just wait. We'll wait for the clock to finish striking. Otherwise we won't hear what you're saying. There we go.
Right. And there was Al Jolson film, I remember that. So they were very ancient, but it more often than not broke down, you know. It was one of these huge things on a wheel.
Oh, the big reel.
Yes. And you could hear it running, you know.
Did someone come to do that? Or?
Yes. I think he was called Howes, Mr. Howes. Now, I'm not sure if he lived in the village or he came in now, I can't remember. But
was that on a particular day of the week he did that?
It probably was. It may have been a Saturday, I don't know. I can't remember the day, but we used to think it was wonderful because you could have a packet of crisps and a bottle of pop from the pub. And we used to go up the back stairs. We weren't allowed through the main pub. We went in the back way and up the stairs. A bit rickety they were, all wooden ones they were. And of course our school used to use one of those rooms as an extra classroom.
Oh right, and I was going to ask you about school. So you went to Stogursey School?
Yes, I did.
Can you remember your first day there?
Not really, but I can remember my first class with Mrs. Hurley. In the infants class. She was quite strict, and you used to have to sit with your hands on your head for so long like this, or behind your back if you weren't behaving very well, you know. And
were you sitting in your own seat, or were you dragged up to the front for that?
no, we were sat in our own seats, very low ones. They were little wooden chairs with a desk.
Were they each pupil had their own seat?
Yes.
With
yes.
the seat attached to the table bit?
No, it was all individual chairs, yes. And they used to have a little sand pit in the side for the younger ones. And we always had a blackboard in front. I still see it now, the blackboard, and this huge clock ticking away the time and hoping it was nearly time to go home, like. And then you had to do your times table every morning. So we started off with the 2 times table and up to a certain point, and then when it got to 7s and 9s, I used to think that was quite difficult, the 9 times table, until you knew the lot. But it was really a good way of learning, because it was almost like a song in a way, and the rhyming and the timing, you know.
And what other lessons did you do? Can you remember, what was your favourite lesson?
My favourite, I used to like story time and English. I liked, and I still like stories now, you know, books. And reading out loud, that kind of thing. And I used to like maths when I was younger, you know, the simple form of maths sort of thing. I was always doing numbers at home, saying, look, this is what I can do, you know. But reading was one of my favourite things, I think, yes.
Were there any lessons at school you didn't like?
Probably geography. Wasn't very good at that. I'm still not very good at that. I'm putting places in the wrong place. And
So what was this about having to use other rooms around the village then? The school wasn't big enough?
No, obviously it wasn't. We didn't have an extra building built in the playground then. It was just the main school and the big room as you went in, because we always had 2 doors to go in, boys and girls.
And you had to do that?
Yes, and the girls left their clothes in the cloakroom one side and the boys in the other. And then the main room was split into 2. We had a screen across for 2 classrooms. And this end had a stage where they used to do concerts and that. And then there was another room went off from there into another classroom. And then from the main one there was another one that went through to the other side. I was trying to think. And the infants was round the back, because it was near to the old toilets and they were down some steep steps.
Inside the main building or outside?
Outside. Yes. They were there for years and years. And you always got mosquitoes and things like that in there, and spiders, you know, very cold going down there in the winter.
And would there have been water to wash your hands?
Yes, we had cold water. Don't think there was any hot. I think it's just cold. I can remember a little alcove to go in, you know, where the running water was. And of course the schoolhouse was next to the school as well, so when the dentist came, that's where you went, into the back room. Was that the
school dentist, or did anyone in the village, could anyone in the village go?
No, it was just the school dentist. Yes, yeah. I remember being very brave and going there, you know, and having the drill and that, because there were old-fashioned drills then. And my parents didn't know anything about it till I got home. And I said I'd been to the dentist, you know. And you didn't have injections then either. But there we are. I can always remember it wasn't very pleasant. But so I've never been a great lover of dentists since.
Not surprising.
The noise it made, that drill, you know, is quite scary, really. So if I see anything on the television about dentists, I never watch it, you know. It always puts me off a bit. But and of course you had the knit nurse coming round, looking at your hair and checking it through. And that's about all I can remember of that, really.
And so how long did you stay at Stogursey School until? How old were you when you left?
Well, Willerton School was being built then. It was a secondary modern school.
Oh, right.
And I didn't pass my 11 plus. I tried very hard to, but there only so many were selected, and I wasn't one of them. So I should have gone to Willerton School when you were 11 years old, but it wasn't quite finished, so I was about 13 before I went there. So I didn't have long at Willerton,
So
just
you
a
had
couple
to
of
stay on at
years.
Stogursey for an extra 2 years?
Yes, till I was 13, about 13 I think,
Gosh.
12 or 13. And then we used to have coaches come and pick us up in the village about 8 o'clock to take us to Willerton. And it seemed massive, that school, in comparison to here.
It probably
all the
felt
classrooms.
very modern as well.
Yes, and all those stairs, and I used to get lost sometimes and wonder which room I was supposed to be in. I remember getting into trouble saying, "You're late, where have you been?" you know. Been looking for the right room. But yes, I spent about 3 years there, I suppose, and then I left to go to work. But
So if we go back, you said your parents came a long way to come from Yorkshire.
yes, my father trained to be a baker, and he worked in a place called Woodlands in Yorkshire, but for some reason he wanted to move away and come west, and I think he found the job advertised in one of the bakery magazines, but how he came to get the job, whether he had to come down and be interviewed, I've no idea. But that's where they came, you know, from there in the early 40s.
And can you remember going to the bakery
Yes.
when he was working there?
Yes. My sister and I both used to go. Mr. and Mrs. Hole that owned it then, the first Mrs. Hole, they never grumbled, you know. We just used to open the big door, and she sometimes popped her head out and said, oh, it's you. Hello, you know, sort of thing. And we used to walk up the long passage to the bakehouse, because it was only a small bakehouse. And I used to watch him making the cakes there. He was often on his own there doing them, you know.
So your father was the baker?
Mr. Hole used to bake as well,
Right.
but Dad was the one employed to do the majority of the work.
And
there.
who did the cakes?
My father.
Your father as well, right.
Yes, he made the bread and all the cakes they sold in the shop, you know. And Mr. Hole used to he used to have I think they've put in a museum somewhere. It's a huge, great van thing that used to have 2 handles on it, and he used to take it round the village like a horse,
Yes.
in a way, really, with the 2 shafts coming out, and he used to hand shafts, and he used to take it around, you know, with the bread in. I don't know how far he went, but he did the village.
Gosh. Was that every day?
Yes, delivering. And of course, when they became motorised, I think it was a Mr. Kennedy who owned the Ackland then as well, him and his wife, and he was somehow related to the Holes somehow, but he had a van, and they used to go further out then, delivering bread round the outer places, you know. But it was a lovely atmosphere there, and it was always lovely and warm there, and the smell was gorgeous.
Yes, and what did they use to fire up the ovens?
Coke.
Coke?
Yes, it had 2 ovens, and then there's a little passageway to go through where there was a door, glass door, and it went into a covered-in big yard, and the where you put the coal in at the back there was, you know, you had to keep it stoked up, sort of thing. It was very warm there, a bit like being on a train, really, I suppose. You know, keeping it stoked up to the right temperature. And then these huge, great big wooden paddles they used to get the trays in and out with, you know, and big oven gloves, like sacking things they were. I suppose thicker than that. You could smell a kind of scorching on them when they're using them so much.
And you said when we first talked that there's always a smell there, not just the bread, but
Yes,
you thought
the smell of the cakes, and it was a lovely smell, I think. And I that's why I always like going in a bakery, but it never seems to be quite the same, you know. I think whether it was to do with the coke and the coal of it, the extras aroma from that, I don't know, but it sort of stays with you in a way.
Yes.
And it's like I said to you the other day, it's like hearing some tea being poured from a teapot. There's a certain sound to it, a homely sound, you know. And that smells quite nice sometimes when you get the smell of the tea coming towards you.
Yeah. The smells are very strong for remembering things.
Yes. And certain ones sort of trigger off little memories, don't they?
Yes.
Of happy days, sort of thing, when you were children.
But you also worked in the bakery, didn't you?
I did, yes.
I remember that.
Only in the shop.
Yes.
I didn't make any cakes. I was never a baker.
Right.
So I can't remember how many years I was there now. A few till they moved away, you know. And Mike used to do the baking then. And Joyce Squires used to help him. And I think there's another lady who used to help in the shop. Margaret Nerton.
Oh, yes.
She lives at Burton. She used to help as well, and then when I started, she retired, and I carried on. But to me, it wasn't the same sort of happy place as when I was a child, you know. It wasn't the same relaxed kind of, well, not to me, it wasn't as happy anyway.
No.
But that's the things. I think sometimes you look through, you know, rose-coloured spectacles of your past, don't you? And maybe you don't always see the faults of it at the time.
As a child, maybe you didn't have the responsibilities of working there.
No, that could be right, yes. But it seemed quite free and easy then, you know, and you could go there any time you wanted to, sort of thing. My father used to play tricks on one or two that did come in to help from time to time. There was a girl called Nancy. She has died, but her family did live in the village for years. And I think he put a mop in the toilet or something to make it look like there was somebody there. And she got a shock because it was fairly dark, you know, when you opened the door. Things like that.
So the baker, obviously, I can remember that, but it's not there any longer.
No.
What else did you have in the village? If you started down by the church, what are the shops and...
Oh, there was a shop in Lime Street.
Right.
In one of the thatched cottages. It was a lending library.
Yes.
And it was run by a Mrs. Brown and Amelia, her daughter, who later became Amelia Chilcott. But she was called Miss Brown then, Amelia Brown. She used to remind me, as she got older, of Queen Victoria, the way her hair was and that. And she was sort of short and dumpy and used to ride a bicycle. But her mother was very, very sort of Edwardian or Victorian looking, with her long dark clothes on and the way her hair was, and a little brooch at the top where her blouse was put, fastened, you know.
Yes.
And I can remember going with my mother and changing books, and I don't know whether they charged anything. Then probably a few pence, I don't know. And they used to have always a few jars of sweets. It wasn't a grocery shop, it was just a few sweets for children.
And that's one of the thatched cottages now,
Yes.
as you go down Lime Street.
Yes,
it
was the first one on your right.
Yes.
Mm.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yes, and people called Gulliver lived in the next door one. I don't really remember them properly, but if there was somebody that knew, you know, and triggered your mind off, you could remember who they were. And
I've heard that down near the church there was a blacksmith.
Yes, it's a bungalow now. Yes, Bob Perry had a blacksmith there. I used to go and watch the ponies and that being shooed. Thank you. And the little paddock where his son, he had a son called Gordon, who I think he died of cancer eventually, but he had a pony and he used to keep it in this little paddock, which is now the churchyard. You know, with the iron gates where you look through, that was a little paddock for his pony. So they must have owned that at one stage. Yes, he used to be very busy. He was quite a big, rounded man, Mr. Perry, and he used to drive the local buses.
Oh, right.
He was the first, bus driver that I remember around here. One of the buses just had wooden seats, a bit like, what can I describe it? It was like slats,
Yes.
little slats.
Yes.
And it was a little blue bus, blue and cream.
And where did that go?
From here to Bridgewater, but
On a daily basis?
I think so, yes. Yes, I think so. There weren't that many buses then, maybe 2 a day, I don't know. But it used to go all the way around the little villages and that, because we didn't have the Hinkley Point Road then.
Of course not.
It was all small lanes, and round Coltings and round Stockland Level and then round Cammage. And
So that must have taken a long time to get to Bridgewater.
Yes. My mum and dad, when they first came here, they thought it was wonderful in a way, because you had all that for the price of one ticket, sort of thing, on this mystery tour, going all round the lanes.
And did your parents have a car?
No, we never had a family car. The only car my father had was an invalid car, when he couldn't walk anymore, because he was always lame anyway. But most of the shopping was done in the village then, at Mrs. Glover's shop, which was a lovely Glorio.
Was it?
It was. I wish it was still here.
What was it like inside?
It had wooden counters, and they were chock-a-block with different things. They were never tidy, on both sides. And oil stoves going, the smell of the oil stoves. And they had a cheese counter on the end. They sold paraffin as well. And they had a huge big white fridge, and they made their own lollipops, used like ice cubes, with the stick in, only for a penny or something like that. And if you sucked them too hard, you sucked all the juice out too quick, so you just left with an ice cube. But she sold everything, and from floor to ceiling there was all these little drawers, and all wooden ones, and you'd say, have you got such and such thing? You used to buy your mantles and things from there, for your lamps. Yes.
Yes.
And she used to look, I've got them here somewhere, she used to say, they never seemed to be in any order, but she always knew where to find these things, But today, it'd be a real Dickinson kind of shop, real curiosity shop.
When did that change?
When people called Cross came to the village, and they must have had it all altered and modernised into a little mini supermarket, which I think was rather a shame, really. I think it would have attracted people in now.
Yes.
Yeah, because people seem to want to preserve things more now, don't they, than what they did then.
Yes.
Everything had to be modernised and
Yes.
a bit like the American sort of thing,
Yes.
But no, it was a lovely shop. And somebody told me there used to be a tailor shop here years ago as well.
You don't remember that?
No, I don't. No.
And where was that?
It was. It used to be in the middle of the village, opposite the Ackland. The Atkins used to live there. It's got a big bay window now in it, like an old shop window, next to the bakery.
Yes.
And then they used to do the sewing. They used to be somewhere near where the garage is now.
Yes.
There used to be rooms there or something. They used to do tailoring in there or something. But as I say, it was before my time.
And was the garage there when?
Yes, when I was a child it was, yes. People called Johnson had it. And the lady that was married to the man that owned the garage, she used to be our guide captain, did the guides.
Right.
And her mother lived in Treetops in Back Street, Mrs. Glidle. Because we used to go there as children and think it was lovely to have tea there, bread and jam and a piece of cake, something. And
with the corner shop?
No, there was. What is the paper shop now was the laundry shop. It was a cottage at the front, and Mr. and Mrs. Hardy owned it, and the lady used to be at a back room, with all stone floors and stone sinks and an oak copper boiler and the scrubbing board and the lines to hang the sheets on. She did it all by hand. And ironing as well, the old-fashioned irons, you know, they used to heat up.
Maybe your mother have taken sheets down there to be laundered, or?
I think she may have done, because no washing machines then, you see. And there wasn't a boiler to put it in, so I think she may have used it more than once, you know, especially when we were small as children. Yeah, I used to go and watch her because the door was always open and there's always steam coming out, you know. Yeah, you could smell it was washing being boiled. I mean, you can't boil things today, can you? But yeah, it was quite a height of industry there, really. Yeah.
So you had the laundry there, instead of what's the corner shop, and if you had Mrs. Glover's,
It's a private dwelling place now,
right.
yes.
Further up the high street, did you have any other shops further up?
Yes, those. A friend of mine remembers there was a shoe mender's shop where Paul Tipney lives.
Oh right.
Mr. Thorne or something used to have it as a shoe mender's, but I can't really remember that. But further up was Mr. Quick's. He had a shoe shop.
Oh right, so 2 shoe menders.
Yes, he sold new shoes as well, and that's where you got your shoes if you wanted them. And that was it was very low ceilinged and stacked from right down on the floor, boxes of shoes, and the smell of that, the leather. And I think for years and years he had things right from the, you know, First World War, I should think. You know, pieces of leather.
Yeah, that must be, that was further up then than Mr. Tipney's.
Yeah, it was opposite the vicarage.
Oh yes.
And there was another pub there as well.
Which was the
Fox and Hounds. So you had the Fox and Hounds, the shoe shop.
That's Fox Cottage, isn't it?
That's right, it's 2 cottages now.
Yes.
Now Gloria Plowright lived there for a while because her parents ran the Fox and Hounds until the 50s, I think, in the 50s. And then they moved down to the Greyhound, so she might be able to fill you in with a bit of life there.
That would be lovely. I'll make a note afterwards of her name.
She'll probably bless me now. I said I would mention her. She said, "Don't you dare." I think she's just a bit shy.
Yes.
That's what it is. What else was I was trying to think? Oh, where Frida lives now, her mother lived in the next cottage, and her father was the one that came to shoot the pig when we had it.
Right.
Because it had to be done properly, you know. And that's what I didn't like as a child. It seemed so cruel, looking after this pig, and it was so friendly with you, and then having to shoot it for food, you know.
That must have been quite difficult, because now if you shot an animal, or you had an animal slaughtered, you would have the deep freeze to put it in.
Yes, well, we didn't then.
So what did you do with it?
I'd forgotten that. We used to have this great huge hook in the ceiling and a bowl underneath, and the whole pig, just from floor to ceiling, hanging there. And they sort of used everything really on it, you know.
The squeak?
Yes, that's right. And I can remember it all being split open and that, and then I suppose it was cut into joints, and they used to salt them down. That was their way of keeping it, and then wrap it in a kind of muslin, you know. But there was always bacon on the menu. I probably wouldn't be able to do it now, you know, but as a child you sort of accepted it.
And did you, as a child, have sort of household chores to do with the family?
Yes, there was just my sister and I. I can't remember them being that strict with us with things, but we used to help washing up and you had to keep your bedroom tidy. And of course it was only lino on the floor then, you know, and so you used to get a lot of dust under your bed, so you had to mop to do it with, that kind of thing, shake it out the window, you know. But that sort of simple things really. Yeah, yeah. And if you were good, you got threepence to go and spend at the shop, you know, for sweeties.
Yes.
But I can remember using rationing tokens, you know, to change for sweets.
Really?
Yes, yes. So they must have still been going early 50s.
Yes, it would have been.
Yes, you were only allowed so many, you know.
Yes.
You couldn't just have what you wanted.
That's right, because
Yeah.
rationing affected butter and cheese and...
Yes, it did.
Didn't it?
Yes, yeah, you were limited to the amount you could have, and tea, that kind of thing. But we never seemed to be short of anything, you know. And having the pig, and then we had chicken as well for eggs, so we were all right. But I can remember when my sister was a bit older, she didn't fancy the eggs. She liked hers with a little lion stamped on it. And if it didn't have that, she wouldn't eat it.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, strange.
Yes.
Because they came from the same place, you know. But
Yes, but yours would have been much fresher.
yes, they would.
Yes.
Would. It's strange, isn't it?
Yes.
I can't really remember anything else.
What
at the moment.
about when you sort of came home from school, the evenings and weekends? What sort of
Oh,
things
yes.
did you do in your spare time?
There wasn't an awful lot to do, really, because there was no entertainment in the village that I can remember, except going to chapel on a Sunday and Sunday school.
You went to chapel?
Yes.
Not to the St Andrew's Church?
No.
Oh,
No.
right. So where was the chapel?
The chapel is what is the church rooms now. It was the congregational church, and Mr. Whitefield was the superintendent there. And I can remember, I couldn't have been very old, standing there and listening to him. He seemed such a big man, you know. He was only little, really, but he had white hair and he had this loud voice. And he said to me, "Go away, little girl." He said, "Come back when you're a bit older."
He didn't want you in chapel?
Not as a young one, no. I wasn't old enough. But now they let you in at any age. He said, go home, little girl. Come back when you're a little bit older.
And had you gone by yourself or had you gone with your parents?
Well, I think I maybe have been living in Castle House then. And I
Right.
must have heard something going on there, because it's not far, is it?
And just slipped
And
across.
just standing at the door and looking through, you know.
Goodness.
But I know. Well, I was baptised at the church, St Andrew's Church, when I was only a few weeks old, because my parents didn't know about the chapel then, and the Reverend Tucker was there then, and he got to know Dad and spoke to him and said I should be baptised, you see. So I was baptised at the church, and then I don't know how many years later, Dad used to play the organ there at the chapel.
Right.
He only played by ear, but you could play anything, you know, sort of thing, if you practiced it enough, sort of thing. And I can remember the Sunday schools there. We used to have quite a few in the Sunday schools. Like Roy Perry, he still lives down the end here now. He might remember some things, you know. He's in his 70s now. And the older boys, you know, the Cavills, there's quite a few of them, really.
Right. So you had Sunday school, you had the occasional films at the Ackland Hood.
Yes.
You did briefly mention guides as well.
Yes. I'm about 13 when I joined them. We used to have to. Now I was trying to remember. There was a lady in the village that took it. Peggy. She was called Peggy Johnson, and then Mrs. Eames at Stringston did it as well. And we used to have to cycle on our bikes up to there, and also our hut used to be on Fairfield. It's still there with the trefoil on it.
Oh, right.
Over the top,
Yes.
up the steps, in one of the old buildings.
Yes.
And that's Rose Nerton, she remembers it as well. She went there. There was like 3 groups of us, you know, in different packs, and we did our knots and our bowling round our waist and coming down over the. I suppose it's where they put hay in the loft then years ago. It seemed a long way when we were, you know, younger, but it's not that big a drop really.
Abseiling down?
Yes, coming down on it to make sure your knots were
good enough.
Yes. There was somebody down below waiting.
If they weren't.
Yes, I can't remember any accidents actually, but there used to be somebody at the bottom waiting for you, you know, to make sure everything was all right. But I mean, you didn't have so much of the health and safety then as you do now. More of a risk then.
And what about going out and about? You mentioned one time about, when I spoke to you last time, about the holidays when you went to the beach.
Oh yes, Sheraton bars. That's summer holidays, that's what it was,
Right.
yes. You had your bicycle and a bottle of fizzy pop and some sandwiches, and you spent the whole day down there really. Just rock pooling and paddling, and nobody worried about you, you know, that you were going to drown or anything. We seemed to come home, you know.
And you went with your sister?
Yes, yeah, she was quite a bit younger than me, but I was trusted to take it. And it was very bumpy going down over the hills, you know, on your bike. But we used to ride the whole way down there and come home in the evenings quite tired out. Well, I have walked it as well in the past. We used, when my sister was small, you know, in the pram, we used to put everything underneath because they were quite big prams then. And you had like false underneath bottoms, and everything got piled into there, and then you just push the pram down there, you know.
That was more of a family outing.
Yes, yes it was. And when Dad finished work, he used to cycle down and have a game of cricket with us, you know. Must have been quite tired really, but we never used to think about that.
No, because he would have been getting up very early to go to bed.
Yes, sometimes 2:30 in the morning, you know, to get the bread out on in time. So, and especially Easter time, those hot cross buns and things.
Yes.
And they used to take in people's turkeys and whatever they wanted to cooked for Christmas if they didn't have room in their ovens. People used to bring it to the bakery, and they cooked them in the ovens there for them. So,
How do you know you got your own turkey back out after?
I don't know how many they had at a time, but it seemed to work out all right anyway. Maybe it wasn't as many as, you know, but there were the odd ones that did do that sort of thing.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
That makes sense.
And I remember the school, we had a Christmas party up at Fairfield once when we were young children. And we were all invited up to Fairfield when Lord St Audrey's was alive then, and all sat in this big room. We must have had we sat round and had jelly and things like that, you know, to begin with, and then we had entertainment afterwards with the magician that came. And I can remember this black bag or something he had, and he brought forth, you know, Mars bars and bars of chocolate for different ones, and we thought it was really good, you know. And it's also brought back to me something at the school that happened when I was there. They had somebody at, I don't know whether it would have been at Christmas time probably, and you know those guillotine things they have where they can pretend to chop your finger off, and you know
it looks very effective.
Yes, it does. Yes, it did. I never offered to go forward. I was a bit scared, but they chopped the vegetables with it, and then they did it with somebody, you know, and yes, I do remember that now. But
were there other special events in the village, fairs or fetes or dances?
We used to have lots of dances. When I was old enough to go at the village hall, because I mean the village hall wasn't built when I was a child. It hasn't been there that many years.
It's
no.
Victory Hall, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. No, it wasn't there then. So
that must have felt very new and.
Yes, I think Dad was on the village hall committee for that when they were first, you know, doing it. And of course they had a football team then and a cricket team as well, which is no longer in existence. But yeah, and the youth club was all being planned and talked about when I was a teenager. and we used to have events to try and get things up. And we had a youth movement then, but we met at the village hall then. That was in the early 60s. And we just used to meet and have records and play and that kind of thing, and go out on trips, that kind of thing, and the odd dance.
Right, so trips that had been organised with the youth
Yes,
group?
yes.
And what, to neighbouring youth groups, or?
No, it was usually to a show or something.
Right.
Yes, yes. Some pop group or something, you know, or I can't remember his name now.
Oh, right.
But it was somewhere in Bristol, I think we went to see them. He was an Australian, and the name's just completely gone from me. But
and so would the youth group be a way of meeting a young man of?
no, it was just to have some fun, really.
Right.
You know, a bit of social life. We used to have like country dancing and that kind of thing. Nothing serious, like. And because the cars weren't about then, really. Not many could afford a car. There was one chap, I think it was Bill Hallett, he was the first one to have a black car, you know, and we all, as many as you could get into it to go for a ride somewhere or other. And but it was a luxury, really.
Yes, yes.
Because we never had one. And I can remember Mr. Squires, he had a car as well. We used to go as children up onto the hill to pick whortleberries and that kind of thing. So it was quite a treat if you were taken out, you know. And I remember Mr. Chidgey, Faye Chidgey's father, Tom, he had his own corn business in Mill Street or Castle Street. And the bins are still there where they do car maintenance now, I think.
Yes.
But it was all corn, you know, and he used to deliver it in his lorries up to the Bristol dock and different places. And we used to go and in the lorry on the back between the sacks, you know,
Really?
all the way to Bristol. We used to think it was a great adventure, you know. We wouldn't be allowed to do it today.
But it was a way of getting out of the village?
Yes, it was. And we used to think it was fun, you know. It was just a ride up there and a ride back.
A teenager at the time?
I was still going to school. So probably about 12. I could have been younger, 10 or 12, something like that. And she was that bit older than me, so and she lived down in Mill Street, and there was an old bakery at the back of their premises. It hadn't been a bakery for years, but it was in ruins. But we used to have the swing out there, you know, swing up and down. Yeah. So there must have been one or two bakeries in the area years ago, because where Derek Skeets lived was an old bakery at the back of his place. Right. But I don't remember it as a bakery. And also Mr. Westcombe up at Grizzlies, there used to be a bakery there years ago. Before you get to the duck pond. So there's lots of things, really.
So you would have remembered then the whole start of Hinkley Point?
Yes.
Can you remember how you first learnt about it?
I can't really. Just remember there was this awful thing about the saying, oh, we've got a nuclear power station going to be built here, and people coming round the door for you to sign a petition against it.
Really?
It didn't do anything. But before that, it had been going to, I think Butlins tried to have a place there, you know, and of course people didn't want that. And I think that was a sign for in a petition, but that didn't come, as you know, but the nuclear power station came instead, although people were against it at the time. I was a teenager myself, but it didn't really worry me that much. I was talking to somebody the other day, and she said it was a terrible time, she remembers, with all the traffic coming through the village, because she lived on the outskirts of the village then. And she's a little bit younger than me.
But there would have been a lot of people who came to live.
Oh, there was.
And do you remember that? Because I've heard there were caravans.
Yes, all through here there was caravans. This was all fields, you know. There was no houses here at all. It was just a caravan site, and also down the bottom end of the village, where the new estate is now. That was all caravans there. So it did bring a lot more people into the area, and of course that's when Burgage Road was built.
Of course, you would have remembered it before Burgage Road.
It was farmland then, you know. The only house here was the Burgage, you know, the house that's empty now. You know where that lady died a few weeks ago? Well, a few months ago then, near the telephone box. That was the only house. It was called the Burgage. And they used to come down through there, through that lane, to come over the fields at the back here. So this was all green fields and trees.
Gosh.
Yeah.
So you used to come down here and play?
Yes, yes. My sister was younger, and I was friendly with a girl called Joan Bailey. She lives in Minehead now. We used to pack a little suitcase with sandwiches, and her sister, her younger sister, and my sister, we used to traipse all over the fields here, thinking we were going such a long way. I went down by the stream to have a picnic. And Mr. Westcombe owned some of the fields then, and he was cutting wood up further down. And there was a lot more gorse then, more covered in. And we sort of went in under the bushes and just sat down by the bank there to have these sandwiches. And we heard this the pig coming, huge great sow. And of course we panicked. We flung all the sandwiches back in the case, and where do we go now? And I had my best sandals on, I think. And so I went to try and cross the stream into this other gateway, and of course I got my feet wet. So I stayed there and helped the others out onto the other side. I'm bloated this pig didn't follow us. So we just stood to the side, and I said, just keep still, you know, maybe it'll go past us, and it did. And so we came back again over the stream, and of course by the time we got home, and her sister and my sister were crying, you know, because they weren't very old, and we tried to carry them over these ploughed fields, and finally got home. And of course we were in a bit of a state then with our feet and that, and I had blisters on my feet, so she said, I'll put you in the pushchair, and she pushed me home. Of course I was in big trouble when I got home. I spoilt my shoes and everything. I wasn't allowed to go out anymore, you know. I was trying to explain why I'd been the good Samaritan, like helping everybody over, but that didn't make any difference, you know. But things like that, I mean, they seem quite great adventures when you're younger, don't they? But it wasn't very far, but
it felt like
yes.
Like climbing a tree, and you thought you're top of the world.
Yeah.
And you look at them now, and
yes.
Not a very tall tree.
No, it's strange, isn't it? Things seem much bigger when you're younger as well. We used to have a little, I can't think of the name, but a little place we used to go to over the fields near Shirton it was.
Yes.
Little den, we thought it was hidden away from everybody. And it was sort of under the boughs of trees and that, you know, and it seemed quite secret and quite nice, you know. There was only girls that were there, sort of thing. And we used to make a point of going there at least once a week, you know, if you could. And sometimes there was a tractor working in the field you didn't want him to see, because we weren't sure if we were supposed to be there or not, you know. And used to try and get there without them seeing us. But when I looked later in years, it had all gone. They'd altered it, you know, and you couldn't see where it was at all. So sometimes it's disappointing when you remember things, happy times sort of thing, yes.
So, sort of lots and lots of memories of childhood in Stogursey. How do you feel it's very different now, the village?
I don't know anybody really. You know, when when we were younger, you knew every house and who lived in every house and who they belonged to. Now you don't. It's you're a stranger in yourself to people, you know. You only get to know the ones that you meet if you belong to somewhere like the church or the village hall or things that you attend. You get to know people, but you don't know them as individuals or their children, really. No, it's quite different.
Is that because there aren't so many village activities going on for people to join in with?
I don't know what it is. I mean, people seem to stay in one place more years ago. People come and they go now quite quickly. They don't seem to settle as they did. So you never get to really know them. Well, that's what I think anyway. But I mean, of course, it's grown that much as well.
Yes,
There's many more people now. You know, I mean, I suppose we were incomers at that time. You see, even though I was born here, I'm not really Somerset blood. So you know, perhaps people wouldn't accept me as being really Somerset. Although saying that, there's lots of people that I thought were born and brought up here actually came in afterwards, you know, so I suppose it's just, you know.
And have you always lived in Stogursey, or did you have a time when you lived away?
I went to Yorkshire for about a year, I think it was. That was when I was in my 20s. Things weren't going very well, and I thought, oh, I want to change, you know. So I went to my dad's sisters up in Yorkshire, but then I missed home and I wanted to come home again. So I came back again. Then I had to find a job, and that's when I did the post round for a year.
Oh, right.
Because Mr. Newbury was ill, and that was before we had equal pay.
Right.
And I did the same round as he did, but I got less pay for it because I was a woman. And that's how I met David on the post round.
But he was doing that as well?
He was working at Hinkley Point.
Right. So
And
had he come to this area because of Hinkley Point?
no, he was born and brought up in St Audrey's. That's his home, West Quantock said. And it just used to. I suppose I got to know him because he saw me on a bicycle and it used to toot up, and I didn't know who it was, and I thought, oh. And first thing in the morning, you don't.
No.
I often used to have rollers in my hair and put a hat over the top, you know, and have this great sheepskin coat on me as well because I was so cold. And I used to, has he gone yet? You know, because sometimes he started stopping, you know, to try and have a word with me. And I thought, oh gosh, I don't want this, you know. So I used to wait behind a bush or a wall, you know, to see if he was gone. Anyway, that's how it started, and eventually I did go out with him, you know, when he asked me to go to the pictures and that kind of thing. But
Yeah, so you did the post round for a year. Was that, you collected the post from Stogursey?
yes,
And how far did you have to cycle?
well, I just did one part. There was three of us. There was George Payne. He did the outline areas, and then there was can't think what her name was now. Another lady, and she did down round Zoggs and out that way, and I did from the beginning of the High Street and made my way out this way to Fairfield and Honeybear and Knighton and Shirton, and then onto the Hinkley Point Road to as far as Govetts, and sometimes coming around Shirton to where you live now, it used to be flooded and I couldn't get through, so I had to come round a different way, and then Newnham's, you couldn't get through there. And I remember Mr. Govett wasn't very happy with me because I left it till the afternoon because I knew the water would be down by then, and I did an afternoon round in the afternoon and came back that way, so I used to often And he wasn't very happy with me, and he upset me once or twice. In the end, my dad took the post up in the afternoon. He used to get his eggs from there, and he was fine with him, you see. I suppose he thought, young girl, you know. Whether he thought I did it on purpose, I don't know, but I didn't.
Gosh, yeah, that seems very unreasonable.
Yeah, well, you did get odd ones. That,
Yes.
it's the same in the shop. You always get somebody that finds fault, don't you? You've got to smile sweetly and say, you know, that's all right, sort of thing. But
So you never got equal pay, though, for that?
no, it's quite. I can't remember when it came in, but I can't remember how much I got now. But say it was about £11, and men got 14 or something like that. Yes, yeah. And shop work wasn't paid very highly either. I worked in a chemist before that. But no, I didn't do anything too grand at all.
No, well, you've been part of the village, though, for a long time.
Yes, it was only when we got married that we moved away for 10 years.
Did you?
Lived at Roewater. And then we came back here when my father became ill, you know, and looking for a bungalow at Cannington first, and then this one turned up, so we've been here ever since.
So you came back to
35
Stogursey.
years. So yes, it's been sort of my home all that time, really. But it's surprising how the time flies, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
that's amazing. I've learnt so much.
Well, it's been a bit bitty, I'm afraid. We used to have a Mr. Ellis at Netherstowe. He used to come round with a van, selling fish and, you know, household goods as well, which we used to stop in the village. I remember buying things off of him, you know, my parents. Yeah. But and where we lived, because we moved from Pear Tree Cottage to Treetops, and there's a house there now, and looking rather sad looking now, I think. But it used to be a garage there, an empty garage, and I think originally it was the old fire station.
Really?
They used to keep the old fire engine there.
Because they've got what
years
they call
ago.
the new house there.
Yes.
The sort of infill one.
Yes, it was between where the old Skittle Alley used to go down. Yes, next to the cottage where...
Yes.
Yeah, well, that used to be our nurse's cottage then, years ago, where...
Right.
I think her name was Haskins.
Right.
Nurse Haskins.
Because they also changed it, didn't they? Because it was Back Street. I mean,
Yes,
you've been calling it Back
always
Street,
Back Street.
but it's now St Andrew's Road.
Yes, after the well, I think they've named it.
And they renumbered the houses as well, didn't they?
Yes. Well, we never had a number.
They're all just names.
Just names. Yeah.
And was it your parents' own house or was it part of the estate?
No, it was rented. Treetops belonged to Bill Webber. He lived in Leet House where the garage people live now. And he owned those 3 cottages. I don't know whether he owned any more. But him and his sister, Jessie, I think she was called, they lived there for many years, and Mrs. Glidel lived in there before we went in there, but because it had 3 bedrooms, we were moving to a larger cottage, you see, because where we lived before, in Pear Tree, where Jane Taunton now lives, that was only 2 bedrooms, and no bathroom, but we had a bathroom in Treetops, but no hot water.
Really?
It's just cold. So...
Right.
You gain one thing,
Yes. So the whole time you're at Pear Tree, you never had an internal toilet or anything?
No, always the outside one.
Amazing.
Yes, and as I say, no electric for a long time. But
And yet that's what you accepted, because it was as it was.
Yes. You didn't go in for new things so much then, like people expect to now. You mend and make do sort of thing.
Yes, well, I suppose we didn't have the television to show us all the new things that are out there and that are available.
That's right. I don't think people had the extra money then.
You're probably right.
You know, being after the war and that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, you don't think of that as children, but obviously that's probably a lot to do with it.
And it's a very agricultural, rural area. And agricultural workers are not well
That's
paid.
right. No, most people had to find their work in the village area or just on outskirts, like farm work or shop work or even cleaning and that, I suppose.
Or the laundry workers, you told us.
Yes. I can't remember ever having any help.
Yeah.
Just this little old lady there, you know. Yeah.
No, you've painted an amazing picture.
But it's just a pity there aren't some older than me that remember before that, you know. I know there's somebody trying to find out a bit of history about the village and writing about it, and his own family as well. And he's trying to go back further than I can remember. So
no, but it's just so good to hear people who for whom it was normal life.
Yes.
And just to hear your memories of it.
Yes.
Direct personal memories. It's great.
Yes. I can remember the wheel of the mill going round, you know.
You?
Yes. And Ben Pearce, he used to live there then with his daughter, Phyllis, she was called, and she was very crippled, Phyllis, and she used to sit in the back there and just wait for people to walk by so she could talk to somebody, you know. And she used to walk up that hill on 2 sticks with her legs dragging on the floor almost, but it seemed really hard work. But she used to come to the meetings they had at the chapel and that, you know, and as an afternoon out, really. But yes, the wheel, that must have been the early 50s, was still going round. And I can remember the Reverend Scholl coming to see Dad to see if he'd make him some special biscuits for a communion from the local grain that he'd been given, and it was ground at the mill and made by the local baker. That's going back a few years.
And so
they
your
were
father
quite
did
nice,
do
actually.
that?
Yes, yeah, it was quite nice. We had a few extra biscuits over, and they were very oaty, you know. They were lovely, really nice. Yeah.
That's great.
Yes, but whether it's a special service at the time, I don't know. Maybe Easter time or something.
Maybe.
But I do remember him asking him. But I'm just trying to think of other things.
No,
and I can't.
that's great. That's wonderful. I'll switch it off now.